zooming down I-95 here on another Temple road trip. This is actually my first, but I'm joining a couple professionals here on the road trip circuit, and Sean Pastor and Dave Goldberg. They've been on many of these things, so we'll get their thoughts and opinions on what to expect today and some recollections of past experiences here.
Pittsburgh left?
And I did not go to any games in the 7-4 season.
All right, now I've been to many a football game over the years, but I'm going to defer to the professionals here. Sean's behind the wheel, Dave's in the passenger seat. I'm going to ask these gentlemen about how many football games you think you've taken road trips to over the years here. We're here, it's September of '98. This started what, in the early '90s? About what year would be the first road trip? What?
Probably coming up on 2 dozen.
91.
91, and
Yeah.
what games do you remember from the early years?
Well, the first trip was to Clemson, and that was, we drove the 11 hours there, went to the game, drove the 11 hours back. The last 3 or 4 hours, I don't really remember too much, we were both pretty much asleep.
So you did that one straight through in one day.
Yeah, that was probably the dumbest thing I know I've probably ever done.
It was the first time I drank black coffee at the game to stay awake. But that was of course the famous game where Ron Dickerson laid into his Clemson team at halftime because they were only up 14-7 at half, and Temple certainly.
It was George Devaney that caught the touchdown pass, was it?
Bryant Garvin.
Oh, Bryant Garvin.
Caught a 1-yard touchdown pass.
Yeah.
Temple then got the ball again. They were up 7-0. They got the ball again, drove inside the 30, had a 4th and 1, and got stopped. Clemson came back, drove down the field and scored. It was still 7-7 late into the half, and Clemson scored on a reverse. I think a 25-yard reverse or a bootleg or something with about 2 minutes left. It was 14-7 at half, and as the story goes, Ron Dickerson, then defensive coordinator at Clemson, laid into his team at halftime like he had never done before, and they shut down Trent Thompson and company in the second half. That was the game where Trent Thompson had 10 yards passing, which was close to his career high. But
and ironically, Ron Dickerson would one day become Temple's coach, and I imagine there's quite a few Ron Dickerson stories that you've amassed over the years.
Well, actually, before that, Joe, if I may expand on that 1991 trip. The next trip after that was the West Virginia game, which was the undoing of many of the positives of Temple football. That was
the day Jerry Burton choked on his phlegm
and passed out.
Passed out in the locker room.
It's a game we lost 10-9.
So this was not one of the banner days in Temple football history.
It was probably in all the games.
Jerry Emick handled it with aplomb, I would say.
Defensive coordinator Ron Chismar took all the questions. You couldn't even hear Ron because he talked like this, and he was barely audible.
Now, I'm going to assume that in the annals of football history, if you were to name some of the memorable moments, the Garden State Bowl, any one of Paul Palmer's 200-plus games, Jerry Burton choking on his own phlegm, that's probably not the top 3 necessarily, but in terms of memorable moments, it's right up there.
He had other glory beyond that. Such as when they were at Pitt the previous year, there was the brawl game that he was right in the middle of. Jerry was a feisty one.
Now, about how many... Have you been to just about every Temple football game then, Sean, since 91?
No, only since 94.
Everyone since 94.
From the season opener in 1994 until today, here we are. I've been to the past, I guess we're working on 47 in a row. This will be number 48. I did miss some of the tail end games in 93.
Now, when you went to the game in 91, you were working together on with the Temple News? Is that what?
Temple News. I believe you were sports editor then.
Yes.
That was when you were just handed the sports editors.
Yes, the 1991-92 year that I was sports editor, the Temple Athletics accomplished nothing. Probably the only time in the 90s.
What?
Except that the fencing team won the NCAA championship, and we selected Muna Bitar as the athlete of the year, and Nikki Frank as coach of the year.
So not a banner year. So what were some of the other more exotic places you've been to? What was the longest trip you've ever went on?
The longest football trip was Clemson. That was 11 hours. For me. He's been to Kansas State.
Kansas State, 1995, season opener. A trip I took with Bill Evans. The Owls, that was another one of the many, many times they've opened the season or a game with tremendous high hopes. Lance Johnstone forced a fumble on the first series. Temple got the ball. On the very first play, John Clark got called for a legal procedure, which is maybe a sign. And then on the very next play, the first play from scrimmage, Henry Byers hit Troy Kersey with a 58-yard TD pass, gave them a 7-0 lead. They didn't score again for a little while. You know, the final score of that game was 31-7, same as last week's Boston College game.
But the highlight was defensive tackle T-Lang Lloyd losing his three-game spread on the field.
He puked on the field.
So many of the most memorable moments in Temple history during the decade of the 90s has been either players or coaches just sort of losing their insides on the field or choking on their own phlegm or
intestinal problems.
Indeed.
So what was the most memorable game of all time that you've been to?
Oh, goodness.
On the road for Temple.
On the road?
I mean, there's probably a lot of choices. I wasn't in attendance, but I know the Rutgers game a couple years ago at Rutgers, the Pitt game at Pitt.
Pitt game's the most memorable sporting event that I've ever attended by far.
And why is that?
It was the worst sporting event I've ever attended in terms of the level of play on the field. And of course, that was the day Rod Dickerson resigned.
It had to have been the worst game ever played.
And
as an interesting
you were there for that, right, Dave?
Yeah, I was there.
This was the day that Dickerson resigned, but then took it back a couple days later, but much to everybody's chagrin around the Temple program, right?
What's weird was that was just such a horrible game to blow that lead, and right when Ron Dickerson went for it on that fourth down with that, what, fake punt was it?
No, they just went, well, it was a fake punt.
But
they weren't out of a punt formation.
Yeah, they weren't.
Right out of a regular formation.
Right after that, Pitt came down and scored, and Sean said he's going to quit. Yeah. That was during your whole tribulation, but that was the only thing he said, but that was basically, he's going to quit. I bet you he's going to walk in and say, at the end of the year, I'm going to quit.
Would you basically say that Dickerson did everything possible to lose that game? Would that be one of the ways of summing that up, or?
He certainly didn't help the team. And then afterwards, in the aftermath of the game, I was sitting with President Leocoris and asked him for a comment, and he was in deep denial about the whole thing.
Sitting there watching the Orioles-Indians playoff game.
Right.
Roberto Alomar just did a 3-run home run to put the Orioles up front. He was like, isn't that great? Look what Robbie Alomar just did. and Dave O'Brien had just come on board. And
he'd been there for 4 months, 6 months.
No.
Yes.
Was he?
He came in April.
I'm sorry, I'm wrong. It was his first year. He came in and he saw the two of us looking about as crestfallen as you could look.
So what were some of the other places aside from Big East schools where you've gone to over the years? Army is known as one of the most beautiful places to see a game. You've been up to Army, haven't you?
Yeah, great place. Great place to see a game. Right overlooking the river.
If you had to rank 1, 2, 3, the top 3 venues for a football game that you've been to.
Clemson was the top for me. It was the first one I went to. I wish I had something to compare it to when I was there, but it was just tremendous, I think. The fans, they were eerily calm. If you remember, Sean, it wasn't like a big zoo like Penn State or any of those other.
It's not a zoo at all.
But Clemson was really calm. But I tell you, the facilities for the press were outstanding. And a great pregame spread, the best I've ever had.
What was on the menu?
They had, besides your assorted cold cuts and meats, they had hot dogs, they had barbecue chicken, they had barbecue beef, they had a whole salad, they had just about everything. But then as Sean would say, the best meal though we had was that West Virginia game, though we lost 10-9. They had the best chicken ever. It was this roasted chicken with that type of cream sauce on it, if you remember, and rice.
It was a nice bed of rice and the most beautiful tasting gravy that I've ever had with chicken.
It's a light gravy, though.
It was really remarkable. The Clemson, I would say the barbecue chicken is what sticks out in my mind. Otherwise, it was not equal to West Virginia, and I've had an equally good meal at West Virginia. The chicken with the rice and the gravy is a staple there.
They didn't have that the last couple of times we were back.
Well, they had it last year.
Did they?
Yeah.
Was I there? I wasn't there.
So if you want a good meal and you're a member of the press corps, Clemson and West Virginia are a couple places you'd like to hit. Are there any schools that you would say skimp on provisions for the press?
That would be Syracuse. Syracuse, which doesn't
place ever. Last year, or was it 2 years ago, they had cans of Hormel chili, I believe.
That's a fable.
It wasn't Hormel chili, but that's what it was like. Basically, they had chili. That was it.
Last year at Syracuse, first of all, they don't put the heat on in that place ever. And if you get there early enough, it's literally got to be in the 50s in there, because they just let it heat up as the people come in and suck all the air out. And they were serving hot turkey sandwiches on old stale white bread, nasty turkey, and the gravy was, right out of the can, an industrial sized can, of course. But that was the saddest meal that I've ever had.
But 2 years prior to that, same situation.
And if you didn't get there at the beginning, it was not hot turkey sandwiches.
But 2 years prior to that, you had these sloppy Joe / chili. And it was right out of the can there too.
And does this offend you as members of the press corps? I mean, you walk in and you see that.
It doesn't bother me.
Well, the overall presentation, you got to have something that ranks up there. If it's going to be cold, serve a warm meal.
Now, was the West Virginia trip of '91 the most treacherous? Was that the one where you encountered a snowstorm?
No, that was during basketball season.
I was doing basketball? Well,
yeah.
we'll digress a little bit here into your basketball trips. When you add in the basketball trips, I imagine we're talking several thousands of miles over the years. West Virginia was for basketball.
That was in 1994. And Sean was up in New York, coming from New York that day. And Philadelphia itself was getting just pounded with snow. And I picked Sean up at Temple, I believe.
Yes, on the campus.
And Sean was like, "We're going." And it was me, Sean, Bill Evans, and Mike Wells, a fraternity brother of ours, one of roommate.
He didn't go.
Mike, and we drove Mike back into the city, and it was snowing so bad that it took us to take back from Temple into the city. It took forever.
No, what took forever was the Schuylkill from downtown to Valley Forge. Probably took an hour and a half.
But nothing was going to deter you. You were going to this game.
The thing is, you have to remember about Sean, and I said this all the time. Sean is touched by God. Whenever there is bad weather, Sean is just the king of driving to the bad weather, because nothing ever happens. There was 2 or 3 situations, Joe. We were on 66 or 81.
God knows.
One of those 2 roads.
Probably.
Because we took 81 on the way back, but we didn't take it. 70. It was 70.
70 or 79. It wasn't 70. 79 maybe.
Well, 79, whatever it was. One of those roads where basically Sean was doing like 75 through this blizzard, and it was ice too. It wasn't just rain.
There was no blizzard, but the ice was pretty thick.
It was ice, and basically Sean was doing about maybe double the speed limit of everyone else, and if there was a slow-moving truck in front, well, you can't step on the brakes. It was over. So there were a couple of times where Bill and I just conceded death if this truck hadn't have gone over, because then you can't touch the pedals when it's that icy. But we made it there about maybe half hour into the game.
We got into Morgantown on time, but we didn't know where the arena was. Then we ended up parking on this road down.
We ended up parking, which is another story, which I'll tell you about after. And so we ended up parking, it seemed like up 2 miles from the arena. Walked in there. Bill covered the game. Sean and I actually watched together from the stands in the corner. Not bad seats. And Rick Brunson did like a 30-footer to put it in overtime. And West Virginia prevailed in overtime, and Bill Evans went down to ask John Chaney the questions. He said, "What happened to your rebounders?" And John Chaney said, "Well, that bastard Paro, and that and this, and cursing that," and he got fined. That was the fine that would later lead to the John Calipari incident. Because because he, remember, he said, I just got my ass blasted down in West Virginia.
Speaking of the Calipari incident, were either of you in attendance in the press room when that went down?
We were not. I was watching that game from New York City.
I was watching
my living room. In fact, I didn't find out about that until the following Monday morning. I recall picking up the New York Daily News, and while I was walking down a hallway in Fordham, actually flipping to that page, I don't even think I got to it when I must have bought the newspaper right outside, and reading about the incident.
I saw it that night on ESPN.
Well, what was the story you were going to say about parking in
Well,
West Virginia?
It was after the game. We just lost, and everybody's cleared out of there. So there really is not a soul by the arena anywhere. We're walking for the car. You walking. 20 minutes go by, there's no car.
I think that's an exaggeration.
20 minutes, there's no car. We walked for a good 45 minutes.
What are you on?
Yes!
We walked for 5 minutes.
Oh, that's a lie. You thought the car was stolen. That's how far we walked. You thought it was stolen.
It was foggy, and we walked for 5 minutes.
We walked for at least 40 minutes. Yes, remember the thing.
It was a 45-minute walk. Explain to me how when we got to the game a half hour late, it was a 45-minute walk to the arena?
Because we were racing. We were running to that arena, if you remember, going there. You were running. Bill and I were too exhausted to follow you.
About 5 minutes away.
It was good 35 minutes. But anyway.
But we were able to jog it in 10.
You were in shape back then. I wasn't able to jog it. I came in later. But,
Well, you say that Sean has been touched by God, and maybe for the most part that's true, but I have a feeling that if I played this tape for the insurance companies that handled his auto accident last winter, they might want their money back here.
Well,
what happened out there in Michigan last year? That was one for the ages, I think. Dave wasn't along on that one, thankfully,
thank
but
God.
apparently Sean might have been applying that same philosophy of I'm touched by God and I'm going to race right through this snowstorm.
It was not a very heavy snowstorm. Wouldn't have happened if the guy in front of me didn't completely do a 180-degree spin out. It's probably a 540 spin out. I think he did a complete spin and then spun again and ended up facing me. So I didn't have quite too much time for that. But
this was on your Midwest journey.
Yes.
You had just seen Temple, Michigan State.
The finest basketball arena I've ever been to. I think I can say in Wisconsin, which then was the greatest old barn that I've ever been to. And in between, I almost died, and I got to visit Kalamazoo for 2 times.
An unscheduled stop.
Of course, I'd been the previous, just 2 months earlier for the first game of Ron Dickerson's final season at Temple.
So would you say that out of all the driving that you've done over the years, that has to rank as the biggest incident? I mean, have you been in any other kind of accidents?
There's a couple of things. Coming back from the West Virginia trip, going back to that, we were on 81 going north up to the Pennsylvania Turnpike, and it was so icy that they literally put signs saying, slow down, please slow down. And the third sign, basically these procession of signs saying, people have died on this road today, please slow down. And so we make it up there, we got up to Route 1, so I'm taking Sean back to Trenton. He's got to take a train to New York and work for him next day.
And we're literally 2 minutes from Trenton.
2 minutes from Trenton with a pickup truck. Slides into me, hits me in the truck, hits me in the side. I spin, hit the wall, the divider, spin, hit the divider, and wind up facing front. And so here we are, waiting for the police to come, and it's horrible, that horrible freezing rain stuff, and the whole ground is just ice.
There was no freezing rain nor snow, but it was ice.
It was ice.
And this was after you'd done the whole thing, going to West Virginia, come back, and at the very end of the trip, this is what happened.
The whole thing. So, and basically, we had Sean moved the car back where the truck hit us, and like 5 minutes after he did that, a car was doing like 60 and tried to pass this truck, and if my car wasn't there, he would have went right into the truck and right over the side. Well, there's no side actually. He would have hit the truck and right into the median, and he probably would have died. But so then as we're waiting for the truck, a policeman, another car came skidding toward us, but going right towards the median. Bill Evans had a leg over the median, ready to jump, but fortunately the guy prevailed.
Ken's joined you on a couple trips, right?
Yes.
How is Ken as a road companion?
Ken's great because when I drive with Ken, it could be a 20-hour trip, and we've done 20 hours. And I don't give up the wheel because I'm not going to get in a car for an extended trip with him behind the wheel. So that works out very well. Ken's only problem is that he's got a very strict diet. So if it's 7 a.m. you might have to stop on the road so he can fill up on X count number of proteins and carbs, and he can't go forward unless he's had this or that.
And of course he has the protein shakes, which do havoc to his stomach, and that's all I'm going.
I know he's big on jogging. If you're driving along for a long period of time, do you have to pull over on the side of the road and let him do a couple laps around the...
He gets by without that. But he can, his strict regimen can cause you to be late if he's got to adhere to it, which happened when we went to Boston College 2 years ago, which was the trip where he lost his glasses. Wouldn't have been able to see the game, so we had to stop at a Pearl Vision before the game, and it took them 2 hours to make his glasses, which forced us to be late for the game. But also because once we left Pearl Vision, we had to go to Friendly's to get a square meal.
So it definitely sounds like there's been some adventures over the years.
The worst trip for me was when my transmission died going to Bowling Green.
That was what?
That was 1996.
96?
We were right past Milesburg, Pennsylvania, right by State College, and we had just reached the highest point east of the Rockies on Route 80.
That's incorrect.
We were approaching it, weren't we? Okay, we were approaching it. Okay. And I was driving, and I heard my gears slowly but surely starting to strip away from my trans. Sean didn't believe this. He's like, "No, it's your tire. That was just the bucking." So we went. Needless to say, my transmission was slowly getting pulled apart, and we pulled over to the side of the road, and 50 yards ahead of us. 50 yards.
So the car died.
The car died, and right on the side of the road. We pulled to the side of the road, 50 yards ahead of us. There's a car on fire. So we have all the police we need. In terms of we didn't have to wait. Meanwhile, my trans is gone. There's transmission fluid all over. It's nothing but metal in the transmission pan, and so I get Joe's pickup truck to come, or Jack's pickup truck, whatever it was a name, Bob's pickup truck to come and tow me away. And we go to this truck stop in Milesburg, Pennsylvania. I get a room, and Ken and Sean proceed to find a bus that could take him to Bowling Green. No.
By the strangest bit of luck, the exit where we got, where we had the car trouble, was the one stop along Route 80 for the Greyhound buses that leave New York City when they're traveling out to Cleveland, Chicago, anywhere out west. Is the one stop in Central PA, or maybe there's another, but one of the few where they make a stop. So there are literally overnight, every hour or two, a western-bound Greyhound bus going through that town. So we were able to buy tickets onto the bus. Ken and I, Dave stayed with his car to take care of the tow and everything in the morning, and stayed in the truck stop hotel. Ken and I were able to take the train, the bus to Cleveland. We arrived, and this was probably about midnight when the car died, I would guess. We were able to catch a bus about 3 a.m. into Cleveland that got us into Cleveland about 6:30. We then rented a car in Cleveland and drove to Bowling Green, where there was, which has happened just about every time we've gone to the Midwest with Ken, there was terrible, cold, nasty, kind of horizontal rain. And the Owls, having just come off of a very close loss to Washington State and having some hope in the program, in 1996, they went to Bowling Green and laid an egg, lost the game 20-16. Ken was as downtrodden a man as I have ever seen him on that day. He was truly beaten down by life that day. And
that's the man you had to travel back east with, huh?
Yes, he was quiet, generally.
Rather somber.
So I was stuck in Milesburg at this truck stop, $80 a night for this room.
Well, what were you doing the whole time when they were at the game? Just hanging out?
I was watching college football. I was taking care of my car. In hindsight, what I should have done was arrange to have the car towed back to Philadelphia and have people that I knew work on the transmission. But I didn't do that. I just said, "You guys fix it." And they towed it to a transmission shop. And Larry, Moe, and Curly worked in my car for almost for like 5-6 weeks.
Once again, the numbers are not making sense.
We went to Pitt like a month later.
In any case, yeah, we arrived back the following night, picked up Dave on the way home. We diverted ourselves in that place. They had a video game.
We went to Penn State too for some reason.
Yes, we did.
We went to Penn State in a bar. I don't know why Ken wanted to do that. But
Just to digress just quickly, isn't Penn State the place, the home of your favorite waffle place, Sean? And you mentioned
various pancakes. I'm not big on waffles. Penn State does have my favorite morning pancake house.
There's an Arby's too that Sean just loves right off of Arby's, right? There's a hot woman that you wanted to hook up with at Arby's.
That's a route. That's in Scranton, Wilkes-Barre.
Yeah,
Where
yeah, I'm not wrong. I'm not making this up.
It's not at Penn State.
Yeah.
Yeah, there's an Arby's where the extension of the Pennsylvania Turnpike meets Route 80, where there's usually a fine array of, I'd say, almost out of their teenage years girls that work behind the counter. I don't think there's one in particular that I've taken a shine to, but there's been several that have caught my eye.
So if anybody's on the road around that area, just stop on by the Arby's. You're shooting.
And there's an Arby's and a McDonald's and something else, but I'd say hit the Arby's.
Now,
It's a pretty good shot deal there.
Did that car ever make it back on the rood?
Yeah.
That was running again?
Yeah, it's running again. I still have it. It's 124,000 miles on it now. I've used the car less on road trips anymore. I had like 90 after. What do you say, Sean? I had like 90,000 when I get to 96. I was 92, so I drove it pretty well. But after that, I kind of did drive it. I still drive it all up and down the East Coast, but Sean doesn't want to get in the car with me anymore after that. Until I get a new car.
Yeah, I don't have a great deal of trust in that.
But the engine's fine.
Now the car that you got into the accident
Same
with
car.
in Michigan, Sean,
Michigan.
no longer, that was done after that, right?
That car was done. I tell you,
But
it was not. You look at it and you wouldn't think that it was total, but because it was just the front was kind of smashed in by the tire. The back had the back was messed up as well. But apparently, it cost a lot of money just to replace the airbags.
Now that was a car that had gone on many of these trips, right? Was that?
Did both of them deploy?
Yeah, that one's seen. Yes. Yeah, that car has seen saw a lot of scenic trips.
And that car didn't have a radio.
No, it got stolen.
Towards the latter portion, yes, I was in Manhattan. Radio got stolen.
So
I decided not to replace it.
So that from that point forward, a lot of the trips were without radio, and you just had to rely on
Conversation.
human conversation to get you through. Now, I imagine when you're traveling to the games, the conversations, at most of the time on the game, but you just have to stray a little bit and throw in a few other things. Now, this is my first long distance road trip with you guys, at least in a while that I can remember. It seems like one of the things that you do to pass the time is debate on who's dead and who's still alive.
I tell you, in the history of those debates, I think that the one that sticks out in my mind would have to be Burgess Meredith. Because I can clearly recall, I guess he died,
Recently.
Very recently, within the last 2 years. And I thought he had been dead for a good 3 or 4 years previous. I was sure that he was a dead man, and apparently he had been living on.
So who's usually right during those arguments? Who seems to be more up to date on the obituaries than is there anybody that clearly is better at keeping abreast of the death notices than anybody else in the car? Is it usually just a toss-up,
It's a question of how many movies we see. If we don't see a lot of movies of Burgess Meredith, then we know he's gone, basically.
Yeah, I wouldn't say I'm usually not an expert on that subject. I'm not the winner when that comes about.
The debate earlier was on George Goebel.
And Paul Lynn.
Paul Lynn is the one that Sean vehemently denies that the man has been dead for as long as he has been.
I felt relatively short. He's been around.
What has he been in the last 10 years?
The thing is, you couldn't have seen him in anything.
No, it was Arians.
He probably barely made Arians from what you guys are saying. I thought that he was in one of those Scooby specials.
No, he was not. He died a young man, like 45 or something like that.
Any other things that are...
Most likely it was one of the old episodes of Bewitched that I saw on repeats that threw me.
Yes. Burgess married a grumpy old man before you know. That was only a couple years ago that movie came out.
That was a movie that had a couple of actresses that over the years have... I mean, Daryl Hannah had her day with Splash. Sophia Loren, obviously one of the great beauties of cinema. If we were to talk about actresses that if we were to, not necessarily the content of the movie, but you know, if there were certain actresses that we wanted to watch, who would they be? Do you think?
Jennifer Connelly, hands down. That is the first one.
And what was the performance that stood out in your mind? That's
Oh my God! It was with Don Johnson and Virginia Madsen. That movie that Dennis Hopper directed.
She had a nice scene on the beach, I believe.
Yes, with another woman.
Okay.
Yes. Yes. So actually, it was a lake, but it was a beach of a lake. Yes. Fine film, and she was excellent in it. Excellent. Well, Sean, you?
I tell you what, strangely enough, you bring up Daryl Hannah, and I always had a very strong feeling for Daryl Hannah.
Ever since Splash, huh?
No, not since Splash. Yeah, she did a film called At Play in the Fields of the Lord, which had a really nice, widespread cast. John Lithgow, Kathy Bates, Aidan Quinn, Tom Berenger. It's a very long movie. It was directed by a South American director, I believe, and it was done in the Amazon, and she had a couple good scenes.
Where I'm going to assume that there wasn't much clothing being worn at that point.
She was wearing absolutely nothing. And I tell you, one thing that I really remember from that scene is that she had big feet.
So she's standing there, stark naked in the jungle, and you come away with, my gosh, she's got big feet.
It was the length of time that she was standing there. Can I have a receipt, please? I went home last week from Temple's game against Boston College. Normally, Temple flies on a charter. And you park totally out. You get free parking in the area of where the charters take off. So parking's never a problem. But last week for the Boston College game, there was a last-minute change, which I never found out about until I arrived at the airport, in which they were flying out of a main terminal. So I had to park in economy parking, and I arrived there Friday morning at 9 o'clock. Parking in the economy parking at Philadelphia Airport is $6.50 a day. As soon as you hit 24 hours, it's the second day. So I returned from the game, got back up Saturday night about 8 o'clock. So I'd been there, what would have been 2 days, and I owed $13. I go up to the booth, give the guy my ticket. You got to run it through this little machine. The guy sits there staring at the ticket, and I take out my credit card and just leave the credit card hanging out, waiting for him to ask for it. And he sits there literally for a good 3 or 4 minutes staring at the ticket, trying to read it because he's apparently got vision problems. He eventually asks me, so did you, and I figured I had picked up that he was having problems reading it. And he says, so did you get here last night about this time? And I didn't even answer. I kind of waved my hands. Pretty much giving a, yeah, I guess. And he flashed up $6.50 on the little display of what the thing was going to cost. But then he sat there staring at it for longer, kept on staring at it, eventually called in, walked out of the booth, went over to this other guy and brought him in to read it. And they sat there looking at it together, and then I'm just waiting, figuring, well, I guess he's going to get a decent read on it eventually. And a couple seconds later, flashes up $13. And the guy begins to berate me. To a degree. First thing he said, so you thought you could have got away with, you were trying to get away with that, huh? I asked you if you got here what time and you shrugged like you didn't know. And I said, hey, I didn't know what you were saying. He said, you knew what you were saying, you knew what you were doing, that $6.50 would have come out of my paycheck. $6 sit there and shrug your shoulders.
Maybe he can use it to buy glasses.
I don't know. So I said, hey, I thought it was $6.50 a day. Was it one day? You knew everything. You were just trying to get away with something.
So in between going to these games to cover them for your paper, you're trying to pull scams on the various parking lots that you're staying in.
This was an angry man.
This was a sting that you had set up before the season even began.
Did not get much yardage at all. John Vereen coming from his slot back position. Had some excellent pursuit and good team defense by Tulane. We talked about the speed of this Tulane defense rather than the size.
Barely any direction here.
Speed play came up big.
And rather than a play that holds the 5-yard variety on the face match, there are two such penalties in college football, one for 15, and of course the lesser of the two.
Now, how old does the stadium think this is?
Now on 1st and 5.
They added it, and I bet when they added this huge tier, which was somewhere in the 80s, they probably fixed it up.
The motion from the slot is Metcalf to the left. Now Vereen.
ACC territory, my brothers.
Searching for Mark Mill to 33. Great penetration for Tulane by Wayne Blair from the linebacking corps.
Wayne Blair, who has 5 tackles on
One pick off this year.
Flying proudly.
The handoff inside Houston and a broken play of Team Holly Falls at the 25-yard line.
Is that the field house? To the left?
We actually the Cole
We were told before the game that Cedric Clemens has a middle.
Looks like a pretty decent tailgating scene.
But it's been Blair who's made the 2 big plays and a couple of consecutive.
All right, we're pulling in here, gentlemen. What's the thoughts on today's game against Maryland as Temple gets ready to tee it up down here below the Mason-Dixon line?
David?
I think we'll win.
I think I should have pulled him out of the lot. That really stinks. I don't know where we're going now. Park! This guy's taking this spot. It's the last spot.
No, it's one to your left.
Set up the game winning field goal on 1st and 10 from the 41. Holly straight over.
Touch, my friend.
And again, it goes to the fullback. This time at the 47-yard line. We'll check that. They'll spot the ball.
So give me a final score, Dave. We want you on the record here.
The first down pickup.
Expecting a defensive battle here?
Doug Howard
31-27.
31-27 Temple?
And leaving the field under.
I tell you, Maryland has a good kicker. I could see some field goals tonight.
Just there.
So what's your final score prediction?
To have the touchdown in their possession. Now,
Oh, I'm going to take the Owls by a final of 31-16.
It's rather easily.
Comfortably.
Okay.
Not easily. Never is there easy.
All right,
Comfortably.
we'll see what happens inside Byrd Stadium, September 26, 1998. Temple of Maryland.
You're a boomer size. We're falling in on Happy Valley.
Saturday after Thanksgiving.
Can't get much better than that. You really can't.
All right, Temple's been guaranteed a win here today by these two gentlemen, so they're the ones to be held accountable.
Byrd Stadium is by the linesman, going to Clinton, the side judge, Thomas Spence, the line judge, Nicholas Turner, the field judge, Gary Mankiewicz.
Byrd Stadium, Temple at Maryland. First quarter action. Well, Maryland just scored a touchdown. It's early yet, but our fearless prognosticators up there in the press box promised us a Temple victory, so we'll see what happens. Halfway through the first quarter, Maryland is leading 7-0, but the Temple bench trying to get the Owls offense pumped up.
6. Vito. Kick is good. Maryland 10, Temple 7. Pioneers, the College of Engineering, and their second annual Fall Christian Athletes. Thank you for your support of Maryland football. Maryland football is always fun.
Well, it's halftime and Temple's only down by 6, so maybe Sean and Dave are on to something. We'll see you in the second half.
Terrapins, 7-yard pickup. Kick is a 9-yard field goal by Brian Proctor. That's 10 in a row now for Proctor.
Jordan on the carry. Taking with number 49, Jason Davis. to number 7, Carlos Johnson, for the Temple touchdown, 15 yards. Maryland 30, Temple 20. Brett Kalapinski on the carry. Final score, Maryland 30, Temple 20. For being part of the University of Maryland